All right. Question is run it back. Now, this goes back to 19, where they felt like they were the best team. They kind of ran it back. We've seen this tour before. We know this team is very close to Neil, but as I just talked about in the comment with Mike Drops with Monza, a lot of things were favorable this year that I don't know are going to be favorable. Should the 49ers start thinking about retooling now? Not necessarily a full rebuild, right? They're not to that point, but a retool where you get rid of guys like Kittle or Debo or Armstead. You start thinking about it and at least shopping them and retool on the fly and try to retool through that? Or do you say, hey, this team was close. Let's run it back. Obviously, with the fact that you're going to have some draft picks, you got to draft some O linemen, you got to improve there, whether through free agency or the draft, what have you, and try to make another run at this. What do you think the 49ers strategy should be?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, when you say run it back, should the same 53-man roster be the one that
No,
comes back
and
next
that's
year?
not
No, I
possible.
mean,
That can't happen.
yeah. I mean, I don't think I think the McKivitz project needs to be removed. I mean, it's great that it seems like Trent Williams is down to play at least another year, if not 2 years, which buys you some
Yeah.
time. So I think definitely with their first round pick, they have to go out and get the best player available that could get you that right tackle, solidified, whether that be through the draft, ideally, rather than trying to do it through free agency. I think that they're going to need some depth at linebacker now because Greenlaw probably won't come back exactly the way Greenlaw was. And I think Oren Burks, we saw he's not the solution there. I don't think he's going to get that significantly better that he could just jump in. And I think ultimately another corner, another safety. So they need like significant upgrades, I think, at certain positions. So to me, yeah, you gotta make some moves. I think you go all in on this year, whatever that means, all in, and you go out and make some splash moves. The core is there, right? I don't think you get rid of this. People are saying trade Debo. I don't see that as a route that they should go. I think you keep the weapons as is. You do your best to make some splash moves, whether it be an edge rusher, definitely retool along that offensive line, and then bring in I think another borderline star, whether it be at corner, edge rusher, or safety, and really, get yourself to the roster that potentially could get you over the hump. Because to me, I'm not giving up on it. I don't think like, hey, this needs to be a start from scratch type thing, like you mentioned. It doesn't need to be that, but you can't quote unquote run it back either.
Yeah, most certainly. I guess when I say run it back, I mean exactly that. Like people are talking about getting rid of Debo, Kittle, what have you. Uh, Here's what I'll say. I personally would prefer to kind of go the retool route, but it's not possible. Not the way these contracts are constructed, in my opinion. And I'll break it down a little bit here in a second. But for me, I think the great teams and the great coaches find a way to move on from players maybe a year early rather than a year late. And seeing Debo Samuel get hurt once again in the Super Bowl and be compromised. He had 11 targets. He could not get open. He was blanketed. Kittle, shoot, man. I mean, other than seeing his long hair in the huddle, I couldn't have told you he was in that game. Now, obviously, when we go back watch all 22, maybe he was blocking and helping out there, what have you. But I was shocked by that. I really thought that George Kittle was set up to have a big game with the corners that the Chiefs had, knowing that he really wanted that ring. He wanted to get back to this point. I just thought that Kittle was going to play great. And I don't know what schematically, if it just wasn't set up for him yet, or if Brock didn't see him. I don't know. But one thing I do know is he didn't show up. And he's now on the other side of 30, I believe. So for me, those guys, the brand that they play, I would love to move on from them and get draft picks. The 49ers aren't able to do that. And so they don't have a choice but to go all in, as you said, this year. When you look at Deebo Samuel, for example, if you want to trade him for draft picks, you're going to take a $21.7 million cap hit to do so. You're only going to save about $6.8 million. Now, you can get rid of him after June 1st, but that means you're not getting draft picks, you're getting players. That's really hard to do. And you're only going to take about a $6.6 million cap hit. George Kittle, if you trade him after June 1st, you're going to take about an $8 million cap hit. But if you trade him prior to June 1st, you're going to take a $19 million cap hit. The 49ers aren't in a position to get rid of these guys. This, for better or for worse, this is the team, essentially, the core that they are going to have. You just have to hope that they can hit on these picks, and these picks can make a significant difference early, much like we've seen teams like Kansas City's young picks make a big difference. So for me, what I would do versus what is actually possible are two different things. But these contracts and these players are structured in a way that it just is what it is. This is what we're looking at. We're going to have essentially a run it back year with some minor tweaks. The core is the core, and it's either good enough or it's not. I have a hard time believing it's good enough after this year, but for me, this is what it is, guys. Like, this is what we're looking at. Deebo ain't going nowhere. Kittle isn't going nowhere. Armstead's not going anywhere. All of them are in the same situation cap-wise. I don't see the 49ers moving on from any of them.